4.13 practice problem 3 gave us a triangle that I decided to use graph paper to cut out and demonstrate. It is 3/4 centimeters on one side and 1 centimeter on the other side. And it told us that this was a right angle. So I thought, let's just use this and we'll call each of these little squares 1/4 of a centimeter so that we can have 3/4 on this side and 4/4 on the top because that's the one. And the same way that 3/4 times 4/4, it's just like whole numbers. 3 by 4 is 12. You can see 12 quarters in there, right? So we're using the same concept, but we're using this as the big square. These are just 1/4 inch squares. This is actually what we're talking about. That is 1 squared centimeter according to this. We're asking how many of these are in the area that we're talking about. So when I put the 3/4 by 1, that is what it looks like. And so this is 3/4 of this. It takes 3/4 of this for that area. So then when we do the triangle, that's actually half of the rectangle. So I can write it this way, 3/4 times 1, 3/4 centimeters squared. Notice that's 3/4 in length. That's 1 centimeter in length, but the squares, now we're talking about this. So you have to label the area with the square, but don't put the squares there. That's length, okay? And don't put the squares by the numbers. It goes by the label. So that is what it looks like, and that's pretty easy. If I do half of 3/4, that is 3/8, and that is the area of my triangle. But the tricky thing that they do is say, we're taking this hypotenuse and we're making that your new base. And what now? Okay, so when I had this rectangle that helped me so much right there, it doesn't seem to be helping me that much right there. But here's how you figure that out. That's my new base, and it's 5/4. So I just make a new rectangle. Where's the top? Where do they meet? That's going to be my new rectangle. So I go 5 across and I go up this far. Now, if you're looking at that, you're seeing that 2, it goes up 2. I guess we'll keep it there for a minute. Not quite 2.5, right? But that 2 represents 1/2. So I'm saying it is less than 3/4 in height, but it is definitely more than 1/2. So in my mind, I'm thinking maybe about 5/8. Okay, so let's just keep going with that and do the math the way we know how. If I want to find the length of the height, the h, I knew where to draw that, but how do I know how to figure it out? So I know that something times 5/4 is going to be the same as 1 times 3/4. There's a couple of ways to figure that out. If you're going with the area of the triangle, you have to then double your answer because it brings us back to the rectangle. Let's start with that one because that seems to be the most complicated way. And if we show that we know how to do that, we can do the simple ways and we're like, oh, it works. So when I divide by a fraction, it is multiplying by the reciprocal. An easy way to remember that is when I divide by 2, I multiply by 1/2. And if you can remember the simple things, then the same rule applies when it gets complicated. So 3/8 times 4/5 times 2 equals 24/40. Now I can simplify that by dividing by the greatest common factor, the number that I skip count by and say both of those numbers. So 24 divided by 8 is 3, 40 divided by 8 is 5, but you need to recognize you did not divide by 8, you divided by 1. So when you say I divided by 8, you have to say I divided the numerator by 8, I divided the denominator by 8. It gave me an equivalent fraction because I technically divided by 1. 3/5 is the simplest form, and it really is close to our prediction that it was about 5/8. 5/8 would be 25/40 instead of 24. So we were 1/40 off. That was really close. Okay, now you're thinking, well, since I already knew the area of the rectangle, could I just divide that? And then I go straight to my answer, and the answer to that is correct. So if you do 3/4 times 4/5, you get 12/20. Very similar, another equivalent of fraction. This time I'm going to divide it by 4/4 because that's the greatest common factor of half of these. Coincidence? I think not. It will still give you 3/5. And then the label would just be centimeters, not centimeters squared. Now, what if I started, with that, and I said 3/4 divided by 5/4? Since they both have that common denominator, could I not just say 3 divided by 5? Yes, I could. Your answer is 3/5. You just need to label it centimeters, no square, because we're talking about the height. And that is your correct answer. Ponder that and look at multiple ways to prove it.